been working on an audience risers layer. Let's go ahead and create an audience chairs layer. So let's do a new class, type audience dash seating. Okay, so that will create a new class for our seating so that if we wanted to turn it off separately, we could do. We are going to use the seating tool, the audience seating tool, to do this. And this is over here in the theater, right? You'll see one of the options is the seating section tool. One of the options is the aisle tool. We will use the seating section tool. So I'm going to just do this off to the side to give you the example, right? So I start by making a box and then I give it a direction to point in, and I usually want it to point like straight ahead at the audience, okay? Then I click OK, and now it's creating this group of seats that are facing in a direction of that arrow, okay? There's a lot of things that you can use inside of here in order to create your seating, and it'll count how many chairs you have. All of this is super useful when we get involved with like flexible black box theaters. But for us, we're going to switch first. We're going to switch from the event chair seat to a different one. And it's not, let's see if I can, I don't know if I can get it so that it shows up on your screen. It's a little bit too big for its spot. So this is basically scrolling down into our seating options in our resource manager. And as you scroll through, what we want is not, in fact, an event chair, but a theater chair. So I'm going to see, it doesn't look like, let's look in the seating layout symbols, seat symbols. There we go. So we want the padded theater seat, everybody's favorite, looks like a theater chair. That will then generate everything based on that kind of chair, okay? So when I say okay, now I get some rows of theater seats, right? They are, at present, all pointing in this direction, and they are built in rows. So there are some other pieces of this that we can adjust. So we can come in here and change our tool preferences from standard to curved, which is in fact what we need, right? Because we're doing a curved set of seating. And we can adjust the distance between the rows. So let's check on that. Let's see how far apart our rows are, more or less. So I'm going to just measure from row to row is 3 feet. So that's information that's going to help us to set our seating correctly. We're going to do front leg to front leg. We're going to make the rows 3 feet apart just so that we know we're in the right ballpark in terms of seat spacing. Front leg to front leg, 3 feet apart. If your chairs are a little bit spaced apart, you can do that. 1 inch seat spacing. The other thing you can do is change the physical width of the object, and that is available too. The other thing, we're going to start by doing the bottom 3 rows, and the other thing that we want to do is have each row come up 10 inches, right? Because we know our bottom row is on the ground, our first row is 10 inches higher, our next row after that is another 10 inches higher. So we can make the rise per row 10 inches to get those seats correctly stacked. Great, I'm going to say okay. I'm going to just start with a rectangle worth of chairs that kind of fits over my 3 section, right? I'm going to come towards the middle of this and I'm going to go straight up ahead. And we're going to make sure that we're in a curved mode, right? And then I'm going to click OK because I'm going to have to do some changes, right? To make that curve correctly. Make it curve correctly. So this is going to be the center point of the arc. So if I move this all the way up here, right, I'm starting to get closer, right? What I need to know is this arc right here and what its center point is, right? Because that is going to give me the best sort of correct angle to work from, and then I can adjust from there. So if I move this off to the side for just a moment, I'm going to hold shift just to make sure I stay relatively in the same place, and I just draw the arc, right? And I'll use this mode, the 3-point mode, and it is going to give me this arc for the front edge, right? That arc center is probably where I want to be. So I'm going to just make that yellow so it's easy for me to see it. I'll delete it in a moment. I'm going to now pick up my seating section, bring it back over here to the center, right? And then we're going to edit it so that its arc center is at the center of this yellow, right? Which is kind of the center of everything, okay? So now you'll see, right, my first row of chairs is sitting right on that front edge where I want it to be. My next row of chairs is kind of sitting right in behind it the way I would want it to be. There's a third row of chairs that I don't care about. Now I can delete my yellow thing, right? Oh my gosh, there's a fourth row of chairs in the front. So I need to slide this back now. Or edit this boundary. Let's see. We want to edit, and this is, you can't see it on my screen, but I right-clicked and I went all the way down here and I edited the boundary. I want to bring this up here just so that I don't get, let's see what happens. Apply the changes and refill the seating section. Yeah! So what that did was it deleted the very first row in the front, and it made the new first row sit correctly on the floor, right? So those are now in the right spot. Are they? Not really. They're a little bit low. Let's go into wireframe instead of shaded view so I can see if they're in the right spot or if they're sitting below the floor, right? There's a possibility I'm sitting below the floor, which is not my favorite place to sit, but maybe I'm correct. No, I think I'm okay. All right, I'm sitting on the floor, just like I wanted, okay? So by adjusting my boundary, I have shifted that front row so that it actually fits where I want it to be. Now I'm going to come in, and I'm going to edit this seating, and I'm going to delete the chairs that I don't want. So I don't want any chairs that are overlapping with steps. That's not going to work. And I don't want any chairs that are in this aisle here. So those should be all the chairs that I need. We're going to just let it modify the boundary so that it cleans it up to be the chairs where the chairs go. This can become twitchier if you're trying to actually match your seating section to the number of chairs in your audience. So you might have to kind of shift or tweak a little bit more. In our case, we can just kind of rough these in and call it good and pretend like it doesn't matter, that there might actually be another chair that squeezes in if this were to shift that way or that were to shift the other way. We're not going to worry about it. We're going to let those be the chairs, okay? I'm going to hit save because I know I'm going to go do this again now for the back rows and I don't want to lose my mind, okay? I also will come in and there's this arrow I can see and I'm going to have it not show that after the first time, right? So I just turn that off so I don't have to look at it. I'm going to do the same routine to set up my back row of chairs. So I'm going to start by tracing the arc that's going across the front so that I can see it, so that I can see where the center of that arc would be. I'm going to turn it a color that's easy to see, like blue, and then I'm going to create my seating section over behind it all. Okay, so let's just do, you know, a little something like that, right? We're going to center up our thing, snap it to there, call it curved, deal with the fallout, right? Same process where I'm going to extend the endpoint even further, and then I'm going to pick up the center, and I'm going to place it at the arc center of my thing, right? And now that is giving me a pretty neat layer of chairs, okay? In this case, my first row of chairs, and I have to kind of look at it to see what I'm doing. My first row of chairs will not exist, right? It would have been here, but I don't need it. I don't need a row of chairs that's on the floor there. My first step up is that first however many inches above the ground, right? My next rows are more than 10 inches. So I may do this section row by row, or I may do the first couple of rows and then the last couple of rows. So I'm going to just pull this out of my way. Let's come in here and figure out exactly where these rows need to align. Because I think I don't need this row on the ground. Goodbye. Goodbye, chairs. And then this next row, right now it's kind of sitting on the front edge. We're going to modify that boundary. And I actually want it to sit kind of closer to the back edge of that piece. See how that kind of is shifting me now? And I'm going to just nudge over and try and get it so that it's lining up inside of that curve a little bit better. That's nice. Okay. Right. Ideally, the backs of the chairs kind of overlap the line a little bit. You can see how that's happening right here. That's pretty close to where I want it to be. I can come in now. Let's see if that changed or messed up the placement of those chairs. Yeah, so those now, they think they're on the ground. They're all the way down here, right? And they actually want to have this seating section wants to start out all the way up on that first step up, which is a bottom Z of 3'4". So I'm going to just give a Z height of 3'4". That should give us that bottom row. And then I believe these are all going to be 1 foot steps instead of 10-inch steps coming up off of that line. So if I were to come in here, I can adjust, I think it's over here, yep, and make this 12 inches instead of, yeah, I did. I made changes to the seats and it brought some seats back, but we're going to come in here now and edit that seating section again. So we'll just, I don't want to delete that one. I just want to delete those ones. I want to delete this one. I want to delete some of these out of my edges. And I don't need a chair here. We don't need a chair here. Let's see how that does. Not bad. That's okay. I'm okay with that. I'm not mad about it. Let's see if they're in the right spots or if I need to adjust them differently. Oh yeah, there they are. They're all sitting up on top of their little risers. The back rows are floating. So now the whole thing I think is a foot too high because it recalibrated based on where the first row of chairs is on the thing, right? So if I look at the right view, I'm not helping myself by leaving those other chairs in the back. Let's move the whole thing down a foot. Let's see. This seems right. So that's sitting on the ground now. That looks like it's all sitting on the ground. I love it. I think that's true. I think all of those chairs are now sitting on the ground and they're in basically the right spots. I can now delete my construction line. I can delete this other random seating sections. I can turn off my focus line. What a beautiful theater. Okay. This is a place where maybe this back row, I would shift it a little bit for today's adventure. I'm going to leave it alone because I'm trying not to do too much, go too far. We're going to save the show. All right. So we are at the point where we can either go ahead and export this as, we're not going to export. We're going to go ahead and clean this up as a ground plan and section view on a plate. If you are very ahead, I want you to go back in next and add in the catwalks, which are sitting above the stage over here. It's possible that you are in this situation. I'm just going to put a pin in this. You are in the situation that I was in, which is that I moved a bunch of stuff around, and so now those drawings no longer match up the way that they are supposed to. But if you have your Garry Marshall, X-Plan, and X-Sec both turned on, and you come in here, you can add in catwalks and ceiling and get a bunch of that information back. It's all in yellow, which makes it extraordinarily difficult to see. But if we come in and force select something in that class, we can see that there's a catwalks class. We can update that catwalks class to be a color that's more visible than yellow, right? And that will allow us to then correct that, bring it back where it belongs. And then you can figure out how you're going to draw in your catwalks. You can make them all as physical shapes and set them on a separate layer. So you'll want to create another design layer. somewhere in here maybe, called Catwalks, that you will place then at the correct height above the stage. So I would just say come into your class, right? And we're going to show organization dialog box. We're going to just come in here and change those to a more visible color. I'm just going to pick like a dark orange instead of a yellow, because yellow is very, very hard to see. So now I can at least see where they would be. I can figure out where they should have been relative to the drawing. It might mean I need to import my XPlan and XSec again in order to line them up correctly. That's not going to make me sad. And then you're going to build your catwalks. If you have, if you're already kind of at the end of the second week of this project and you really just need to be done, then you will turn off those 2 layers. You'll go back to your theater layer. We're going to come over here and delete all of our extra measurings and whatnot, because I don't need any of that. I'm going to force select it until I can find it and then delete it. Turn off my other 2 layers, and now I'm down to just my actual drawing, right? We're going to then create a ground plan and a section viewport. So we'll start with the view menu, creating the viewport, putting it on the ground plan layer. We'll leave it there at 1/4 inch scale. We'll call it ground plan and say, okay, let's see how that fits on the sheet. I'm not sad about it. And then I can go into, if I were drafting this for a show, I might make it a little bit bigger so that it fills, so that the ground plan itself fills the page better. But for the purposes of this adventure, it's totally fine as it sits. And then I'm going to come in and make a section view out of this drawing that'll go onto my section sheet layer. So if I come in and I go to View, Create Section Viewport, and then I draw, right? Click at the top, click at the bottom, and now it's going to ask me to select which direction this viewport looks. Double click on that. Gives me all of this stuff about creating a section viewport. I'm going to put it onto my section page. We're going to call it section. And we will say, okay, and then let's look at it. Great. Okay, so this isn't bad, right? It looks pretty good as far as section view goes. You'll see that the section, everything that's been cut away back here is solid black, which is not really our standard. Like, really, we would want it to have the same diagonal lines that we have on our exterior walls in our ground plan view. So that's something we can change, because the style of the fill is driven within the classes in Vectorworks. So that's automatically generated by classes. So we can come in now to, again, we'll click on this guy, Show Organization Dialog Box, and we will find our section class, which has been created specifically, section style, right? And we'll come in and we'll look at our fill. It's not, let's right click to edit and see if I get a better thing. Yeah, so section style, the fill, instead of solid, and I am going to say use it creation, instead of solid, I want hatch, right? And it's going to default to that hatch I used most recently, which is the diagonal lines. And then I can say, okay, I can say, okay. And now when I get back out, right, my section view looks pretty good. Okay. I don't love that this solid is not sitting all the way under the wall, so that might be something that I would tweak or update before I would send this to someone. And then obviously, hopefully I would have in some hypothetical future, I would have my catwalks included in my section view as well, so that my lighting designer and my lighting positions, so my lighting designer can do the work that they need to do based on that information. But this is a pretty good situation for our section view. Once you have those 2 sheet layers, you'll have ground plan view, section view. We're going to go ahead and use the publish export mode. So publish allows you to export multiple sheets at the same time. So if you take your ground plan and your section view and you pop them over to the other side and you hit publish, we don't need to save it as a save set, so I don't usually do that. I just let it be, right? And then create that. This is, remember, where I put in the date, so 09/22/25, and I don't want it to be there. I want it to be some entirely other place on my desktop in my CAD folder. Save it in there. Now that will exist in PDF, right? So now I have one combined PDF that includes both of those pieces, and you can see that that section is indicated here with this section line. The other thing I might want to see that I don't see right now in this ground plan view is I'd want to see where my plaster line, my center line are, so that might be something I would turn on. You'll also want to update your title block to include correct information, and then including the scale, and then you can clean up all of those things and submit the PDF. There are two assignments. There's a PDF assignment that you submit the PDF to, and then there's a Vectorworks file assignment that you submit the Vectorworks file to, and you'll submit those two things in Canvas, and that's it. That's the game. You did it.